Hello and welcome to my Woolly PhD. My name is Liz Scuff and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm learning and making in my PhD, all about, what am I studying? Researching, all about wool in Iceland, in anthropology. I said that? Probably. Okay. Confusing start. Let's hope we get better. If you've got no clue about what I'm studying, it's evolving, but there's an introductory video at the start that kind of describes some of the elements of it. So last week, I didn't do a video, and I said the week before that I might not do one because I was doing something exciting. Anyway, the exciting thing was a shearing workshop for women about how to shear Icelandic sheep, taught by this incredible shearer here she's an excellent shearer, but an excellent teacher as well. So that was super exciting. And yes, I sheared 1.5 Icelandic sheep. And it was awesome, and I had some really great conversations with women there. Anyway, it was a whole thing. It was great. But oddly enough, today's video is not about shearing. It's about the role of climate in culture, because it was about a 9-hour drive from the southeast of Iceland, where I'm based, to the workshop in the northwest, basically from one corner of the country to another. You can't really drive that much further in Iceland. And as I got further north, the landscape turned snowy, like really snowy, and I suddenly realised, wow, I can't really come to understand anything about this culture if I'm not here through a winter, because the snow, the ice, the dark and the extreme cold just changes everything and helps make sense of so many things. And it was also like I was experiencing a lot of these things on a very individual level that made me kind of think about the cultural systems or ways of being that must be shaped by those experiences. Anyway, like seeing the Icelandic sheep in snow-covered fields, scraping the snow back with their hooves to eat the grass, I just sort of thought, oh, there's like things, clevernesses and knowledges from sheep and skills that I didn't know about that I get to see now in the snow. But it also made the structure of their fleece just make sense in a way that they don't make sense in summer. Like you could see these Icelandic sheep in these summer fields and think, what do they need? That must be hot. But so it was really interesting. They're just so comfortable in the snow, just sitting around like warm as toast. Anyway, and the horses similarly look different and make a different kind of sense in this snow-covered landscape. So it was just really interesting to me to notice how different that change of climate sort of made my thinking and my own experience in the place. And the way that the snow makes the landscape kind of harder to discern, like it's harder to see roads and turns because kind of everything is white. It also made the farm lights that people leave on, so farms that are kind of dotted all through the landscape. In the snow, you can't really see them. They all have a practice of, they'll have often a really big light stand, like a street lamp, out the side of the shed or in the car park of their house or something. And they were so comforting, like driving around just kind of going, oh, Google says I'm on track and I've got lots of fuel, but, things can happen. And if I get stuck and I had to walk, I can see where I would walk to. And there was just something very friendly about the lights. And turns out the practice goes back sort of well before electricity was a thing, is that people would always sort of leave a light on in the small windows of the kind of huts where they sort of lived. So there's also like a cultural way of being, personality-wise, in a sense that is connected with the weather, where people just don't get so stressed about plans changing at short notice, because the weather changes plans so often in such non-negotiable ways, and it creates this what looks like an easygoingness, but that I'm also thinking it's easygoing in some ways, but it's a system of priorities where surviving is the most important thing. And there's different times of the year where survival is precarious and requires planning and cooperation and the pooling of resources and things. And so surviving is important and it is taken seriously. But sort of beyond that, we sort of, we do our best with what we can and, not get too stressed about much else. So it's really, that's really generalizing, but there is an easygoingness in the culture that from what people say here, and I can really make sense to me being here, is really rooted in the extreme climate conditions, which is interesting because you could kind of think, an extreme climate might make people more uptight. Maybe it does in some ways that I haven't seen yet, but mostly it makes people more just like, plans change and okay. Anyway, like trying to get back from the north to the south, like the Reykjavik region or the southwest region had the highest October snowfall since records began in 1921, basically in one day. So I couldn't actually get back when I was intending to get back. I had to stay an extra night somewhere and a drive that should have taken an hour at one point took 4 hours. It was an epic journey and such an education in snow. My first time driving in the snow. It was bonkers. Anyway, that's a story for another, maybe not a video actually. Anyway, there are some snowy landscape pictures and sheep shearing pictures and on my Instagram, Liz Making With, if you want to check them out. Now, in anthropology, there is, I think, a lot of diversity over time about the role of climate in culture, and where some people have paid a lot of attention to it and some people have paid no attention to it and have attributed kind of different cultural practices and ways of being to things completely unrelated, or attributions that don't include climate at all, which, I don't know, the more I'm here, the more I just think, is that really plausible, theoretically? Anyway, I suspect not, but I'm still a little bit too new on the scene in anthropology to make such a big call. But one thing I was particularly struck by the difference between intellectually knowing that climate shapes culture and by the sudden sort of bodily experience of it, which then also entangles, sensory perception with climate and culture, etc. So it was just really, maybe just think that, again, about the value of field work and the sensory perception of the researcher too, how important it is in the thinking and theorising processes as well. Because there's a lot of things that I could sort of notice in my own experience, being relieved when I would see other cars on the road, because for long periods I wouldn't see any. And then thinking, gee, what happens if I break down? And when I'd see someone, I'd think, it's okay. Every now and again, somebody else uses this road. So that experience then makes me think, well, culturally, how does that influence how people create and maintain community and cooperation? Because obviously you cannot survive this climate on your own. So there's lots of different ways in which those little personal or internal moments, or from my own sensory perception and experience in the environment, could help me sort of start thinking about the culture and thinking about theories. So yeah, it was really interesting experience of the sensory research, the sensory kind of tools that inform then theoretical ideas and then questions to take into the culture and to ask people about. Anyway, if you want a reading for this, if you want to search about it, I think ecological anthropology is probably the best search term. And there's Tim Ingold's The Perception of the Environment. This is really worth a read, but it's not open access. Can't get the book. I think have I seen this book at readings? Not sure. So you see some Ingolds at readings. Anyway, but yeah, if you can find other things that are more accessible. It also makes me think about like simple things like Christmas in Australia, right? Like it's hot. Some of us go to the beach for Christmas and we have barbecues outside. Like the climate changes, the ritual practices, the clothes we wear, food preparation, housing and sort of different shelters we use on Christmas. It just changes everything. I don't know. This past week has really helped me pay a lot more attention to it because really, really cold, like a cold that I couldn't imagine before, and, you know, really icy, snowed over roads and things. Like, it just really grabs your attention. Anyway, and sustains it for really long drives. What have I been making? Oh, it's been very productive. A couple of weeks, actually. So I did wear this in the last video, but I have blocked it since, but I'm not wearing it because the neck's itchy and it's irritating and I didn't want to get changed because I couldn't be bothered. Oh, it still smells so amazing. So the blocking's done and I think the colour work is looking a bit better for that, and I think it will, it's still a bit lumpy and bobbly, but I think that will settle over time with wearing. But this neck is itchy. I don't know why it's itchy. Like, I've been looking at the wool and it's got a little bit of Kemp in it, but it doesn't really explain, not much. Anyway, it doesn't explain the itchiness. I'm going to go ask someone who, sorry, I keep bumping into the microphone. I'm going to go ask somebody who knows a bit more about it at some point, what they think. But what I am going to do is I'm going to pull this ribbing back. I did do an Italian sewn bind off here, so I expect that's going to be a pain. I may actually just pick up the stitches and snip it off. And then I'm just going to bind off with no ribbing. I may take it down a few rows, I'm not sure. But the more I can open that up, the better, the less sort of it'll sit on skin, and the easier it'll be to put like a collared shirt over it or something if I want to do that. I'd like to wear it without a collared shirt though, because it's got such a lovely yoke. Anyway, highly recommend the Benjamina Lopa Pacer by Fakir Knitting, Feykir. But it's not on Ravelry. It's not on the internet. You can find her on Facebook. She's also on Instagram. Yeah, and then you just contact her and ask to buy that pattern. It's in Icelandic. Google does a good enough job of translating it if you've knitted a sweater before. Yeah. I have cast on a few other things since finishing that. I have... Oh. I've just dropped the ball of wool. Here's one of the balls of wool. I've cast on these mittens and got a needle stuck through them. This is the first pair of mittens. First pair of mittens I'm making from Icelandic Mittens, this book which I've shared before. And they're coming along quite well. I don't enjoy doing colour work on DPNs, I have to say. I'm not sure who does. But don't bother recommending Magic Loop to me because I just can't do it. I don't like it. So anyway, I enjoy. The yarn is this really lovely yarn called Hjónaband from Uppspunni, and it's an older sheep yarn. And I feel like it's softer than the younger one, but I don't know. It's plumpier or something. It's quite lovely. Anyway, I also cast on some very chunky socks, very chunky wool. Then I don't have a pattern, I'm just doing it because I know how to do a sock. I'm doing this in like a 3x1 rib, and I'll just do that through the whole foot. And this is in the Verga Sokkar, which is a sock yarn from Uppspunni, which is like most of their yarns are a 2-ply. This is like a 3-ply, extra tight. There's no nylon, and that's very excellent. So, but I really need warm socks, and I need them quickly because I don't have, turns out my wool socks from home are not warm enough. You know, it's really nice knitting some things that I actually just really need rather than, oh, this is nice. Yeah, which is also this thing that I made, which is a little headband, and this is from, not sure if the light's getting it very well, but Isiga, is this how you say it? I'm not sure. They're one of the merino alpaca blends. So I went to one of the excellent yarn stores in Reykjavik, Storkarin, and I asked for like, show me the super soft non-superwash yarns, and I had a lot there to choose from, but I stuck with my colours and that helped make it an easy decision. I didn't use a pattern. I just gambled with a guess. It's a 2x2 rib. I cast on 124 stitches on 3.5 needles, and I was holding the yarn double. I think it kind of equals about a sport weight when you double it. Anyway, I don't really like headbands and I don't ever wear them, but the ear protection is actually really essential here, and I don't always want or need a beanie. So I knitted that. I probably should have made it a bit wider, but I was kind of impatient for the needles because I needed them to start the other thing I've cast on, which is the Althea sweater by Jennifer Steingass. And this is the one I'm making. I've shared this a few times, I think, in these Plutelope plates of, it's an unspun wool. They don't call it a yarn. And it's not felted. I don't really understand it, but it's quite delicate to knit with, and you hold it double, but it's very strong once it's knitted. Anyway, so what have I got? It's probably a little bit hard to see. I didn't do a gauge swatch. So let's see. I suspect, I don't know, it makes a very beautiful fabric already. So I'm holding the light brown and the dark grey together, and then the contrast as the main colour, and then the contrast colour is just this kind of paler grey. I'd seen something like this in this really cool store, Thingborg. They've got a lot of hand knit sweaters there. Anyway, that's where I bought the Plutelope. Anyway, it's really lovely. And it's so interesting because it's so delicate to knit with, because it just breaks so easy. I'm holding it very loosely and knitting slower and noticing it's really relaxing compared to how I normally knit. I hadn't realised that the way that I normally knit was not so relaxing. So anyway, it's giving me a lot to think about in terms of my knitting practice. But I'm enjoying knitting with this immensely. It is for my daughter and needs to be finished, blocked and dried by the end of November, so I've got to get a move on with that. But I also really need warm socks, so it might be the mittens go on the back burner for now while I focus on the others. But yeah, so that's what's been going on this week. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, particularly about climate. I haven't really gotten to climate change yet. It's not really on my agenda as a focus in the research, and it hasn't really emerged yet in the field. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I don't think climate change is the only interesting thing to look at in terms of climate, but it's certainly very important as a topic. So yes. All right, I'll stop now. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.